Your grandma loves him, your uncles, your aunts, your grandchildren, everybody loves Chris Bumstead. The man can do no wrong. Everything he touches turns to gold, governor. So what about his training? FST-7. Will it work for you? Greetings, good day and welcome. Coach Troy Brown here, Apex Physiques, IFBB Pro, and today we're going to be talking about a very important figure in the world of bodybuilding. His name is Chris Bumstead, Canadian bred, Canadian born, from Nova Scotia, I believe. This guy has everything, doesn't he? Before we get going here, hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell to alert you when more videos come up. This guy has everything, doesn't he? He has the looks, he has the physique, he's got the look, he's a good looking man. He has the looks, he has the physique, he has the build, he has the genetics. Genetics with hard work equals a phenomenal physique, and he displays that in abundance. He really needs no introduction. His name is Chris Bumstead. He is what you would call, well, I would say he's probably the next Arnold right now. He has a massive following. 18 million people follow him on Instagram, supposedly. Your grandma loves him, your uncles, your aunts, your grandchildren, everybody loves Chris Bumstead. The man can do no wrong. Everything he touches turns to gold, governor. So what about his training? FST-7. Will it work for you? Is it a good system? Well, I actually can give my opinion on it because I did it. And also, I'm a good spokesperson for FST-7. Now, being that I am originally from the high-intensity Arthur Jones, Mike Mentor, Dorian Yates philosophy of training, I've also used a lot of volume training in my pro career. And I actually got to work with the guy that invented FST-7, and his name is Hani Rambod. Hani Rambod is actually Chris Bumstead's trainer. When I got to work with Hani Rambod in 2009, now I don't know if the FST formula has progressed or it's changed since then, but I'm going to go through what I did back in 2009 when I worked with Hani. And what's interesting about FST-7, it's called fascia stretch training. Fascia stretch training. And now that I know a little bit more about science, back then in 2009, I didn't really understand science. Obviously, I was a hard worker, I had decent genetics, but I really didn't understand it. And I want to share today really what it's about, and really also how it can really serve you and also help promote muscle mass in your training. Hopefully that sounds like a good idea. So we've already mentioned FST-7 is fascia stretch training, right? Now we're going to dive into two elements of FST-7. Number one is the foundation of the training, and that would be where you would pick an arbitrary muscle group. We're going to focus on chest, right? Since chest is a muscle group that we all want to improve upon. I believe a chest muscle can never be big enough. So let's use an arbitrary muscle group. We're going to talk about chest today for FST-7, and we're going to put it in two formats. Number one, we're going to talk about the chest training as a foundation, which would be 4 movements. We're going to pick 4 select exercises that are going to benefit you. Now, I'm going to pick movements that I used to do. They may have changed now that I'm 46. But when I was training, doing the FST formula, if I was training chest, I would pick incline barbell press as my first movement. My second exercise would be some type of hammer strength chest press. My third type of exercise would be maybe a power fly, a heavy power fly. You'll see the power fly located either here or here, and the power fly, you can go really heavy on them. And then my last movement would be the FST-7, which I'm going to talk about in length in a second here. So those first 3 movements would be heavier weight. I'll be tapping into that myofibril hypertrophy of training, right? Trying to hit that myofibril, which has been shown working at about, I believe, about 65 to 80% of your 1RM. So you're going fairly heavy, provided you've got good form and execution. So provided that you've got good form and execution. So you're going to do these exercises. Your volume would probably be 4 sets for each of those exercises, those first 3 movements. So incline barbell press, you would do 3 sets. Your rep ranges would be between 6 and 12, okay? You're going to do probably 4 sets, maybe 3 to 4 sets, heavy sets. You could employ the high intensity principle in that last initial set, provided that the exercise is safe And if you have a spot on the incline press as an example, would be a good idea. So that way you can push yourself and go close to positive failure. And remember, I've always talked about positive failures. When form starts to break down, that's when you know you've hit true failure. So I'll do these movements between 6 and 8 rep ranges, and my last set would probably be close to muscle failure. So I've gone through the incline barbell press, I've done the hammer strength chest press, I've done the incline power fly, and now I'm going to go into the FST-7 format. So with those first 3 movements, we've tapped into the myofibril, okay? We've caused inflammation in the body, which is a good thing, which is going to cause repair and growth when we're outside the gym. So when we get to this FST-7, it's all about pumping now. So back then, I just wanted to get the pump, right? I really was chasing that pump. So when I would do these 7 sets, now how Hani did it for me back then, and I don't know if it's changed. What Hani did for me, he would tell me to do cable crossover for chest, and we would do between 12 and 15 reps with lighter loads, around about 30 to 40% of my 1RM, so light loads. And the key to this one is very, very short rests. I would probably rest back then anywhere between 30 to 45 seconds in between sets, and it's 7 sets with lighter loads with 30 to 45 seconds rest in between sets. When I'm doing the heavy stuff, the rest would probably be around 2 minutes, maybe 60 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on the movement pattern. So when I got to these 7s, I realized I would get a tremendous pump. One thing that I would encourage you to do if you're looking at FST-7, when you're doing these 7s, is to drink water in between rounds. And that way you stay hydrated. I believe the number one issue why people tear muscles in bodybuilding is because we live in a dehydrated state. So I think consuming water, pouring some sea salt in there as well. A little bit of sea salt will probably help you. Due to sodium is important for muscle contraction, right? When you look at the neuromuscular junction, right, sodium rushes in, and sodium has its positive charge, and it goes down T tubules and goes into the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and then calcium is released. And the 2 things we need for muscle contraction, as we already know, I've mentioned in other videos, is ATP and calcium, right? Muscle contraction cannot occur with those 2 variables. So when we're doing the FST-7 on the cable crossovers, I always say if you're doing the 7 sets, the last 3 to 4 rounds should suck. You know, you're trying to really push yourself. You're trying to force as much lactic acid in the muscle. And that's what we're doing in this pump situation, is we're bringing lactate in. You see, the difference between a good bodybuilder and an average bodybuilder, the difference between the 2 is a good bodybuilder has more metabolites, they have more stores of glycogen and more connective tissue products than the average bodybuilder. So somebody like Phil Heath, Ronnie Coleman, you can see their muscles expand very easily. They got that full muscle belly, okay? So somebody like myself, I didn't have the Phil Heath bubbly look. That's why FST works so well for someone who has phenomenal genetics. So when we're doing these FST-7 with higher rep ranges, lighter loads, short rest times, when I do it now, I look at, with the information that I got from Brad Schoenfeld, he talks about doing higher rep ranges, going up to close to 30 reps. You can get close to mechanical failure hitting 30 reps. If you've ever done it, it's bloody hard work. So you can go higher with these rep ranges. What I do now with the FST-7, I actually call it muscle rounds, that I learned from when I worked with Matt Jensen, who used to work with Dallas McCarver. God rest his soul, he passed away. When you are building lactic acid in the muscle, what you're doing here, the body is an amazing instrument, first of all. What you're using is your body starts to go through what we call, basically you've got mitochondria, right? We all know that there's huge amounts of mitochondria sitting in muscle cell. And through the mitochondria and oxidative phosphorylation and electron transport chain produces huge amounts of ATP. Now, here's the difference. Why do powerlifters and bodybuilders exhibit quite a significant amount of musculature? Whereas the bodybuilder has significant amount of musculature than a powerlifter. It's their training variables that have changed, right? A powerlifter will tap into the creatine phosphorylation, which only lasts for about 3 to 5 seconds. But this is why they're showing scientifically that it's best to build muscle hypertrophy with the 6 to 12 rep ranges, and even higher, which is where FST-7 comes into the play perfectly here. So when you're getting that lactate and you're getting a tremendous pump, your body starts to produce lactate, which goes from a different pathway. So now your body's starting to use glycolysis, which is glucose. And now you're getting a tremendous pump. There's lactate in the muscle. And this is where maybe you would look at the satellite cell, where it donates a nuclei. So that way we start to use other pathways like mTOR, MAP kinase, calcium signaling pathways. And it's been shown that that also produces hypertrophy as well. So there's something very powerful about combining heavier loads in the first format of FST-7 with your first 3 movements, and then introducing the pump formula of FST-7 with lighter loads and shorter rests, combining them both together, right? Sometimes what I do, a lot of my clients, is I'll put them through an intensification phase with heavier loads and compound movements. And in another phase, I would do strictly accumulation training, where I do a ton of exercises with short rests, something like German volume training as an example. But you can actually maybe bring both of them together in one workout. Why not? I think this is what Hani Rambod decided to do when he called this fascia stretch training, right? And we all know that fascia is dynamic and it can grow, right? If you look at the satellite cell, when it donates a nuclei, the nuclei sits between the basal lamina and sits above the sarcolemma. So that nuclei sits in the middle of the muscle cell, right? And above that, you've got the basal lamina, the connective tissue, and then underneath that, you've got the sarcolemma, which is the muscle cell. And what happens is when that satellite cell donates a nuclei, it adds in other metabolites, and there's thousands of different metabolites, but the ones that I was talking about, referring to as mTOR, MAP kinase, calcium signaling pathways. And this is what happens when the muscle starts to swell. And as a matter of fact, now they're showing that also blood flow restriction, hypoxia training, BFR training also helps with hypertrophy also. But the research was done on healthy, fit college students. So you got to try these things out in order for them to see if they'll work for you. So with the FST-7, in summary, Chris Bumstead's training, I think it's a great format. In fact, I actually feel that if you are somebody that really wants to learn training modalities and really good form and execution, watch Chris Bumstead's training. I think he really does have impeccable form. He's a student of the game. And my old mentor used to say a pro is at their best regardless. And he really is leading the charge. He's a great spokesperson for the sport. He's a good ambassador for the sport. He's got it all, right? As I mentioned earlier, he's got the looks, he's got the physique, he's got the build, he's got the genetics, he's got the work ethic, which we all can use and relate in our own lifestyle. So, Chris Bumstead, I salute you with both hands, brother. You are what we would call a phenomenal bodybuilder, but you have phenomenal work ethic and you have great genetics. And I really believe that you deserve to be where you're at. It's a positive move that you went with Hani Rambod from a career standpoint, but also from a training standpoint. So if you look at really good bodybuilders, I was mentioned earlier, Ronnie Coleman, Phil Heath as an example, they have more metabolites, they have more connective tissue products potentially than an average bodybuilder does. And that's why genetics does play a massive part in bodybuilding, right? And a lot of us would love to have that round muscle belly look like Phil Heath has, but I think that's just pure raw genetics. Raw genetics with hard work will basically catapult your physique over a 1 to 2 year period if you're willing to do the work. And I always say the physique is built in the off season, right? When you've got an abundance of food, you can rest and recover, you can really pay attention to rest and digest. So will FST-7 training work for you? But here's my reality. I truly believe that whatever format you use, high intensity, or if you use volume training, something like FST-7 as an example, both modalities really, really work. I also believe, why not combine both of them into your training? Since I spent the majority of my career doing high intensity training, Arthur Jones might mentor Dorian Yates' philosophy, as I moved over to the United States, I started doing more volume and looking at getting more of a pump in my training, which also benefits hypertrophy as well. So a lot of this is theory, but a lot of it you have to try it out for yourself and experiment. And don't be afraid to try something for a long duration of time, because we all know that muscle takes a long time to build. Anyway, FST-7 does work. It's a great formula, especially when you understand it at the cellular level. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Have a great day. Cheerio, governor. And I'll see you, my friend, on the next video. Bye for now.